Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to talk about the calculator buttons and the order in which to push them so we can get to the functions that we are going to need. You will need your tools before you get started, your highlighters and your pencil, okay, and then a copy of the calculators from Google Classroom, or be prepared to take notes and write those down and be specific, keeping in mind that you can always pause the video if I'm moving more quickly than you can write. The first picture that we have here is Basics 101 of the keyboard. This just explains to you where you can find certain buttons, okay? What I want to point out, I'm not going to read this to you, but I do want to point out the fact that there is a negative sign and a minus sign. The minus sign is an operation. If you have a negative number, you must use the negative sign. The rest of that you can read on your own. Our first calculator we're going to look at, we're going to label this as Go Home. Go Home. When you are somewhere in this calculator, the screen is showing something you don't want to see and you don't want to be there, you got to be able to go home. Take it back to the original. You must know how to do this. So here's how we get there. We're going to push the second button, which is blue, and then we are going to push mode. Second mode. And I'm just outlining that a little bit because it means quit. Blue means I'm going to the blue functions, so I'm going to quit, and that will take me back to my original home screen. So that is an important place to be. Okay? Our next calculator is going to be fractions. So we're going to label this at the top as fractions. Okay? So how do I get to the fraction place? Our fraction place takes us to anywhere you want to deal with a fraction. Here's how we get there. We're going to push alpha, which is the green button, so I'm going to highlight that green. And then y equals, which is up here at the top, and all of our graphing buttons up here at the top are gray. So I'm going to use my pencil and lightly shade that in. And that will give me my fraction place. Now, in the actual screen here, we're going to write those steps. So, first step, alpha. Our second step is y equals. So, alpha, y equals, and it's going to then pop up a little text box inside. So, on your screen, you'll see a little text box pop up, and what it will have is 1. Little n over little d. N stands for numerator, D stands for denominator. So that would be, if you're just using a fraction, that's where you're going to want it to be. This number 2 is going to be if you've got a whole unit and then a fraction. Number 3 is going to be if you want to go from a fraction to or from, that's what the double arrows mean, a mixed number. Okay? And then number 4 will be if I want to go from a fraction to or from a decimal. Okay? So, alpha y equals takes you to your fraction place. Okay? Now turn the page over. And what we're going to talk about next, which is an important skill for us to have and for us to know what we're doing here, we're going to talk about how to get to absolute value. So we're going to label our calculator. And I want you to keep in mind, if you're struggling to see what I have written, there will be a completed copy on Google Classroom for you to use that will be easily seen. Okay, for absolute value, we're going to go to Math, and then we're going to use the right arrow key, and we're going to arrow to the right. And what we're looking for is number 1, and it's going to be A, B, S with a parentheses. Now when you type that in, it's going to actually give you the absolute value symbols, but this is what it looks like. So we're going to go to Math, which is not a colored button, but we're going to outline it just so it stands out a little bit. Math, and then we're going to use our pencil here for the right arrow. So we're going to arrow to the right. And then we're going to choose number 1. Okay? Which is going to be right down here. Let me get that moved over a little bit for you. Right here. And I'm just going to outline it. Whoops. Because it's also not a specifically colored, so I'm just going to outline it. Okay? So that will get us to our absolute value. Now I need you to keep in mind that this is essential that you remember these because you've got to commit them to memory. Okay? You'll have this to refer to, but I will not be telling you what buttons to push and such to get to certain functions. Okay? Now our next important function for us is how to graph. How to get to a graph. Okay? First of all, we're going to go to y equals. Then, under here, we're going to type the equation. That's important. Then we're going to just push the graph button. And it will graph it for us. Now keep in mind, again, that the y equal button is at the top of your calculator, and y equals is the first on the left. We're going to use our pencil to shade that in as gray, because that's a gray button. We're going to type in our equation, and again, graph is one of the graphing buttons, so it's also gray. So we're going to shade that in with our pencil. Okay? So, that takes care of that. We've got one calculator template left, and that one we're going to use to show table of values. How do we get to a table of values? Okay, the table of values. And again, I want to remind you that a clear copy of this will be posted for you on Google Classroom. So to get to the table of values, we go to y equals, and then of course we're going to have to type in our equation. Okay. Then we're going to push the second button and graph. And it will give us a table of values. Step 1, y equals, that's our gray button at the top left. Let's shade that in with our pencil as gray. We're going to type in our equation. Then we're going to, second button is blue. And then we're pushing graph. Keeping in mind that when I push blue, I get the blue words, and this will be blue up here at the top on your calculator. Okay? Now, you have options for calculators, okay, that you saw on your supply list, so make sure you check that out as to how you can get one of those.